This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Thursday, the 28th of April, 2022. We are now approaching the end of the Dark Ages study that we are doing, approaching the topic of the Norman Conquest of England, which happens in the year of our Lord 1066. Canute the Great, the man who went down to the sea and dared the tide to stop coming in, ends up ruling both sides of the North Sea. He rules Denmark, which is right here, and he rules England, and this is the North Sea in between. But in the end, the Anglo-Saxons are able to reclaim their independence, and so England is back. Let's take a look at what constitutes England at this time. Well, Cornwall, which had been Celtic for a very long time, is finally brought under English conquest. So Cornwall, Wessex, Sussex, Essex, and Mercia are all now part of England. King Offa builds his dike, which basically divides England from the land of the Velas. The Velas are what the Anglo-Saxons call the Britons. Now, the descendants of the Roman Britons have devolved a bit. They've given up city life, and they've returned to sort of a pre-Roman Celtic living standard. In the north, England's Northumbrian territories are bound by what had been a Celtic kingdom, making that too far south, of Strathclyde, or Strathclyde, the land across the Clyde River, and in effect, this is the border with the land to the north. Now, the land to the north of England during Roman times had been occupied by the Picts. But in the early Dark Ages, one of the things I had not told you was that the Irish decide, we want it. And they launch an invasion, and they settle the land of the Picts, either replacing or overwhelming the Picts. And these Irish who colonize Scotland become the Scots. Don't call them Scotch. Scotch is a drink. Scots are the men who are so manly they wear kilts, who hurl logs for fun, and who ultimately will invent Scotch whiskey, as well as golf, as well as Presbyterianism. So, England is basically this area here. And the capital of England is going to become Londinium, which is the Roman name for London, which is right here. Today, one of the world's great cities. So, England is now back in charge of its own destiny. This area here is divided between the French and the Burgundians, that's Lotharingia, and the Germans. The Danes and the Norwegians are doing their thing. The Norwegians still control parts of Scotland, which they took from the Irish, but end up partnering with the Irish to rule. And the Norwegians actually established the city of Dublin, which is going to become the capital of Ireland. England, in the early to mid-1000s, is under a king named Edward. King Edward the Confessor is not a ladies' man. He's much more of a monk. And what he does is he rules England more in the habit of a priest than in the armor of a knight. Habit, monk. Little joke there. That's early. It wasn't funny.
It's very much a dad joke.
Like dad jokes. Anyway, Edward the Confessor ain't called the Confessor for nothing. He is someone who takes on priestly duties. But because of this, he doesn't fulfill one of his kingly duties, which is to have kids, an heir and a spare, so that the monarchy will continue. Instead, at points of weakness in his rule, Edward the Seventh, not Edward VII, wrong king. Edward the Confessor is going to make promises to three guys. At a time of weakness, he intimates to King Haraald Hardrada of Norway that when Edward dies, Haraald Hardrada of Norway can become King of England. Haraald at least remembers this. Second, to alleviate a hostage situation, Edward promises William the Bastard of Normandy. He's called that because his legitimacy is questioned. Here's Normandy. And he makes a promise, and this one is more fully substantiated by history, but then again, history is written by the victors, that when Edward the Confessor dies, William, the Norman Duke of Normandy in France, is going to be able to become the new King of England. Which is funny, because Haraald Hardrada of Norway thinks he's going to be the new King of England. But it gets worse for England. Because a local lord named Haraald Godwinson, two Harolds. One Haraald is spelled H-A-R-O-L-D, that's Godwinson, the Englishman, the Anglo-Saxon. The other Haraald, H-A-R-A-L-D, Haraald Hardrada of Norway. Haraald Godwinson, an Anglo-Saxon lord, is promised that he will be made king in England and of England when Edward the Confessor dies. Now, the laws of physics tell us that only one object can occupy a given space at any time. That's why cars don't pass through one another. Instead, they have accidents. That's why when you're walking through a crowded hallway, you've got to worry about the people in front of you.
Why don't you just
or not?
Push it with your...
Well, that's what I do, but I'm from New York. I learned to do that very young. Elbows and shoulders are a really good thing. You make yourself narrower and you just cut through. Maybe if you have a big voice, you say, out the way, out of the way. But yeah. Then again, the crowd might look at you and go, feed him. And that's not good either. So, there are three heirs to the English throne, and they each think that they're the only legitimate one. And Edward dies. Yep. He dies. Now, I used to run, I still do, Dungeons and Dragons games. And when I was in college, I was my girlfriend, who became my fiancée, who became my wife's dungeon master. And she had a character named Jade. Don't ask me why. And Jade ended up owing a bunch of favors to a variety of beings, some of which were infernal, evil, diabolical, devilish, that when she died, they would get her soul. But there were like a dozen of them by the time she finally died. And this was a big trick to get them all to fight against one another for what really was just one elvish soul. How is this going to be resolved? Well, King Haraald Godwinson is on the ground, so he is going to be crowned King of England by the nobles, by the court, by the bishop, and so, before anyone else, Haraald Godwinson is made King of England. But it's not going to be long before this is challenged. Because up here in Norway, probably actually a little farther south than that. So, up here in Norway, Haraald Godwinson organizes the last great Viking invasion of England. Dragging longships, hairy men with horned helmets, axes, and all the rest.
They never had horns on their helmets.
Baloney, they didn't.
They didn't.
No.
Historically.
Historically, most of them didn't. But there were a few guys who did. Because there are always exceptions. Are you racist? You're saying that there's no horned helmets among the Vikings. How do you know that? How dare you identify them as hornless Vikings? They identify as horned Vikings. What do they drink out of? Horns. So, like they have beer hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, baseball hats with flaps. You put your beer cans in. You get straws. Well, imagine a mead helmet. Okay, because they use horns to drink their mead and their ale and their beer. So you fill it up and you cap it, and then you screw it onto your helmet, and you've got your drink right there waiting for you. Now, he's right in that most of them didn't, but it's a great image, and I love it. And I'm sure there were one or two guys who did, but no, typically they did not.
Wouldn't that be happy?
It would.
If you've ever watched How to Train a Dragon, you know they have horns on their helmets. Just saying.
Yeah.
I have not, unfortunately. I'm uncultivated in that How to Train a Dragon fashion. It is. It's shocking. How could I, a history teacher, not listen to such history? Anyway. So Haraald Hardrada lands in the central coast of eastern England. Let's see, what's a good color for the Norwegians? Think.
Red.
Sure. Okay. So the pink Vikings under Haraald Hardrada land, and they're marching south. So Haraald Godwinson, who I will make orange, which that's England, marches north and meets the Vikings at a place called Stamford Bridge. Here. Now, while this is happening, William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, is taking his troops, which I will make green, loading them up, and they are landing in the south of England near a place called Hastings. But they're en route or just landing. Meanwhile, Haraald Godwinson and Haraald Hardrada fight the Battle of the Heralds. It's actually called the Battle of Stamford Bridge. There's an actual bridge. The English hold it. The Vikings try to cross it. It's like the Battle of Thermopylae in some respects, because the bridge channels the Vikings into a small, narrow attack. And the Anglo-Saxons, the English, under Haraald Godwinson, basically chew up the Vikings to the point where the dead bodies clog the stream, and the stream runs red with Viking blood and Saxon blood. This is a brutal, bruising, bloody, violent battle. And the result is that the last Viking attack on England is defeated. Haraald Hardrada is a loser of this battle, and Haraald Godwinson's Anglo-Saxon army is victorious. Yes.
So I've heard a story about a Viking berserker, and I don't know if it was the Battle of Stamford Bridge, but I know there was some battle with a bridge where he held off like 60 guys or something.
Berserkers will do that, and then they'll die usually.
Yeah,
because,
and then he died,
but yeah, no, it may very well have been at Stamford Bridge. But one berserker, bless you, is not going to win a battle, even if he's super heroic.
Yeah.
That story has been told from ancient times. You've got a guy on a bridge. Remember Horatius at the bridge, the Roman story, and the story of Cassius Chaerea, who fights the Germans while the bridge is being destroyed behind him. It's a good story.
Mm-hmm.
If you're ever a soldier and you have a chance to fight a hopeless battle and die, make it on a bridge, because you can channel the enemy in. Anyway, I don't want you to make just yet for your death. No, that'll come in its own good time. Here's the problem. By the time the Stamford Bridge battle is won by the English or the Anglo-Saxons, the Normans have organized themselves at Hastings. So, Haraald Godwinson does a forced march south to meet them. Now, let's see. Got a hilltop with a hillside. And you've got forested swamps behind and beside the hillside. And Haraald Godwinson's Saxons actually take up position on a hilltop near the Norman camp, which is green and down here. So William has a choice. Well, he doesn't really. If he wants to become England, he has to play King of the Hill with Haraald Godwinson's army. Now, Haraald Godwinson's army's heart are a group of soldiers that are called housecarls. The housecarls are Haraald Godwinson's and the Anglo-Saxons' elite soldiers. They're big. They're strong. They've got good armor. All of them. Armor that covers the... You've got helmets, and you've got mail going down to about your knees. And the housecarls are armed with great axes. Now, they don't look like Gimli's battle axe. They're not double-edged. A housecarl's axe looks a bit like this. And here's the cutting edge. Still, that's a long axe. Grip it down here, swing it. You're going to cut down a lot of things in your way. Beside them, on both sides, are the Anglo-Saxon warriors. They're shield walls. And they and the Vikings basically fight in the same style by this point. They've got the Viking-style broadswords and the Viking-style temporary shields, and so they're up there. Now, the Norman army is much more diverse. The Norman army consists of mounted knights, crossbowmen, and heavy infantry. They also have siege engines, but they're not going to play a big role in this battle. So, the Norman knights and the infantry, which are their foot soldiers, and the crossbowmen, they begin moving up the sides of the hill. When the crossbowmen in range, they start shooting. Now, in history, as I may have said, unlike in lightsaber combat, the high ground is actually a good thing. You have view, the enemy tuckers himself out on the way up the hill, and by the time he gets up there, he's tired, you arrested, and you just whomp, whomp, whomp. And it's easier to defend a hilltop, if you've got good supplies anyway, than it is to charge up a hilltop.
ObiWan can fight both down and uphill, but
ObiWan's just a
Anakin
legend.
doesn't know
Yeah.
how to fight.
Because Obi-Wan withheld that lesson. Because Obi-Wan knew that Pipsqueak's whiny boy was going to be a problem someday, no matter what he said. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Shut up!
Maybe they are. Look at
Well-
Yoda. Yoda is, there's no way he's not.
No, Yoda's a jerk,
Yeah.
and the Jedi Council are idiots. But there were Jedi like Qui-Gon that were good. Yes.
If you were using like hand weapons, like a
By the way,
lightsaber,
those of
for
you at
example,
home, I want to point out what really gets the conversation going is, of course, Star Wars. Go.
like a lightsaber, for example, wouldn't being on the bottom be better? Because
Yes.
if you think
Yes.
about like a right triangle, you'd be able to hit their legs and they wouldn't be
Exactly.
able to hit your head because it's
Yeah.
the hypotenuse of the right
Exactly.
triangle.
No, you're
It's
absolutely
the
right.
longest side.
You've got the high ground, Obi-Wan? Here, block me slicing your ankles.
Well, whose
Right,
ankles
right.
really got
And he
sliced?
couldn't get you in the face because it's
Yeah.
it's the longest side
Yeah,
of the
it
triangle.
is. No. Actually, having the high ground, if in lightsaber combat, is a disadvantage. But not to George Lucas.
Because you
Yeah, and then there's the flippy, like a pancake, flippy battle.
My
Yes.
absolute favorite character.
Hold on. What?
The flip thing he did on Obi-Wan, that was actually the move that Obi-Wan used on Darth Maul.
Yeah.
It was frowned upon by the Jedi. It's like a Sith.
Yeah. On the other hand, it cut Darth Maul in half, but according to the canon, doesn't kill him because he comes back with the stupid metal legs like a crab.
no, he's
And then he's got a stupid brother whose name means oppressive, savage, sauvage oppress. This is all from Clone Wars. Yeah. Which is dubious, I would say.
I mean,
I'm sorry, you cut a guy in half, he's freaking dead. Yeah.
Ahsoka Tano's, I like her character a lot. She's a pretty good one. I really
Yeah.
like Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and her because they're all like gray Jedi.
Mhm.
They're not like strictly Jedi, but they're not.
Well, the thing is, the Jedi should have been a force for good. But by the time the 90s came along, the creator, George Lucas, didn't believe in good and evil anymore. So it was all mixed and obnoxious. And fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to... Nah, go.
I think we can all agree Jar Jar's the best character.
To kill? I'm telling you, you have the reason...
No, he
The
comes
reason that stormtroopers can't shoot is because they basically go to the shooting range and there are pictures of Jar Jar to shoot at, but they get so angry they don't shoot. They charge and they beat it to death.
back. Jar Jar, what did you do?
It exists.
He's a exister!
Exactly.
Exactly. No, the secret Sith Lord theory is what you're talking about. Moving on!
Oh, I just like Jar Jar.
Moving on. So,
Better than that little Yoda.
put a key in front of that amp and then you've got Yoda for real.
Because The Mandalorian's a really good series. I think that they're doing.
I believe. They gotta bring back Cara Dune though.
Yes.
And Jar Jar.
Okay.
No.
She's just gonna come back.
The Normans charge up the hill, and there is battle. And the Saxons hold the line and drive the Normans back, and the Normans go back in disarray. Oh, this is going to be harder than we thought. That was early morning. Now it's mid-morning. The Normans are back. They charge up the hill again, and there's battle, and the housecarls, and the Normans, ting, ting, ting. I should tell you, that Normans and Saxons do look a little bit different. Right light switch, please. So yesterday, I called up a bunch of pictures. This is before I did the wicker lawn furniture lesson. Okay. Okay. So, here's a Saxon Fyrman from the Fyr. The housecarls are similar, but they've got two-handed, long axes. So, he's got leggings, lousy shoes with no arch support. Nobody had arch support in the Middle Ages. It's terrible. He's got a chainmail shirt that goes down to above his knees, and he's got a helmet. He's got a round Viking shield, one of those temporary shields, but it'll do for now, and a broadsword. Now the Norman, in some ways, looks similar. He's got leggings, just like the Saxon. He's got lousy shoes without arch support. But his helmet is a much better helmet. First of all, it's made of better steel. It's better designed. And it's got a nose guard. Now you might think, that's stupid. It's a nose guard. But since the weapons of the time are mainly slashing weapons, if you have a chunk of steel sticking in front of your nose, a number of blows that would otherwise, I don't know, cut through your skull at your eye level might not do that because you've got a nose guard. You're still going to get whammed in the nose. You'll have a broken nose and black eyes and all the raccoon-like stuff that goes with it, but you might live. And the purpose of armor is to help you live. Now, a lot of Hollywood movies get this wrong. You do not wear a helmet without having a padded cap underneath. Otherwise, somebody goes bongo on your head and you die of the concussion and the crushed skull. You have a big, thick, padded, poofy cap under your helmet to absorb some of the blows. The same is true, by the way, for armor. You don't just wear armor like over your shirt. You have a padded gambeson is what they're called. It's a padded shirt under your armor to absorb the blows. Now the Normans have good chainmail. The Saxons have basically what's called ringmail, which is less, the rings are bigger. Chainmail, remember, is you've got a bunch of little rings linked together. I think you brought some in earlier in the year, am I right?
Yeah, there's also different kinds of chainmail. It's like chainmail where you just bend it into the ring. And there's also chainmail where you bend it and then you like solder it shut.
Yeah. The Normans had the better kind. And their rings were smaller. Now, the point of chainmail is not to stop an arrow. Chainmail doesn't do a very good job because an arrow's entire force is in the tip. And there's so much force in one spot, it will tend to split the chain and go through the gambeson and perforate it. It might stop it, it might not. Plate armor is ultimately necessary to deal with that, and even then it's dicey. But what chainmail is good at is turning a slashing weapon like a broadsword into a club. What it does is it prevents the sword from cutting through you by giving you an armored layer that's going to stop the cut. Unless you're really good, it's not going to cut through the chainmail. And because of the gambeson, even the crushing blow, the bludgeoning attack of the broadsword is going to be dissipated. So, both the Saxons and the Normans have chain. Normans have better chain, and it covers more of their body. Let's take another look just to see. See? Short sleeve shirt, bigger rings, lousy helmet, and less coverage. The most obvious change, of course, is the kite shield. The Norman kite shield is not quite a Roman, imperial square shield or rectangular shield, but it's better than the round shield given how the Normans use it. It covers more of the body. You can stab it into the ground and create something like a real shield wall. And you can also use it, boom, to kill. Now, any shield can be used in the attack. It's called shield bashing. But the Normans are good at this. The Normans also have a chainmail kerchief or scarf that comes behind their helmet to protect the back of their neck. So the Normans have at least 1 or 2 tech levels advantage over the Saxons.
It's called a quaff.
I always called it a coif, but you're probably right. Very good. Anyway, the second attack happens at mid-morning, and it's driven off by the Saxons. And the Normans are getting frustrated, and the Saxons are like, yeah, we killed the Vikings, we're beating the Normans, hey, bastard, where's your daddy? So the Saxons are getting confident at this point. And William calls his knights together, and for the third time in late morning, they charge up the hill again. And there's battle, and there's killing, and there's dying. And then, all of a sudden, the Norman line breaks. Instead of retreating in good order like they did before, the Normans panic and turn and start running away like a little puppy. Now, here's where control of your men is important. Haraald Godwinson says, hold the line. But his men are in the throes of battle frenzy, and they see an enemy who has broken in front of them and is running away down the hill, or riding away down the hill. So they can't help it. It's like a poorly trained guard dog. You wave some bloody steak in front of its nose and toss it. A well-trained guard dog will then attack you. A badly trained guard dog will be fed by the burglar. They can't resist unless they're well-trained. And the Saxons are fearsome, but they're not extremely well-trained. So the Saxons, who are all on foot, mind you, start charging down the hill. Yeah! The housecarls, for the most part, stay with Haraald. But some of the housecarls go down, and the feared Anglo-Saxon warriors, they charge down the hill. Now, you have this sort of weird situation where you've got foot soldiers chasing foot soldiers. Okay, that's fine. But then you've got foot soldiers chasing mounted knights. They get to the bottom of the hill and start charging across the field, south of the hill. And at this point, the Normans go, because this was a feint. It was a fake out. It was a deception. It was a trick. It was a trap. And the Normans wheel around and slaughter the Saxons. And then they charge up the hill at Haraald's remaining forces, and they kill Haraald, and they win the Battle of Hastings. Now, this is a turning point battle in the history of England and of the world, because England becomes Britain, and Britain conquers the largest empire in human history, founds us. We're pretty important too, so kind of a big deal. Just slightly. Now, this victory is commemorated by something. I had intended to wear a tie that I have that has this on it, called the Bayeux Tapestry. Bayeux is a Norman castle down here in Normandy. And to commemorate the victory, they make this giant tapestry that's like the wall to the wall to the wall, really long, really thin. And it's a comic. It tells the story of the Norman conquest through the Battle of Hastings. And a few years ago, one of the great justifications for the internet is that somebody made a motion picture video of this Bayeux Tapestry. So I'm going to ask, please, that you close the shade over there, shut the fan off. Emma, would you be kind enough to close the window slats over by my desk? I will pause the video because God forbid I violate anyone's copyright. So, it's been a while since I've taught this, and I always end up speaking one or two details, so I will clarify. When Edward the Confessor was still king, he had promised Haraald Godwinson the throne, as well as Haraald Hardrada. But Godwinson ended up being kidnapped by the Normans. And in order to extract himself, Haraald Godwinson promised that if Edward the Confessor died and he became king, that he would refuse the crown and give it to William. But when the time came, he didn't. Also, it was not crossbowmen, wrong. They were Breton archers from Brittany, and they used short bows. Those little bows that you saw. So, let's take a look at the Bayeux Tapestry without the animation. Okay. Cool. Large. I'm not shopping for it. Okay. Now let's see. So, why is there we go. Okay, so you see the various stages. The Normans are getting ready to cross the ocean or cross the channel. There they are in their ships. Note the borders, the decoration on the borders, the little sheep and the dogs and the eagles. Got somebody hawking. It's definitely somebody hawking for pleasure. And you've got some letters, which of course are in Latin, so I don't read them. And maybe you can. But you can see the fact that that animated version didn't exaggerate. The art is very stylized, but there is a truth to it. Norman knights did sort of, kind of look like that. And they get the kite shields right and the armor right. The helmet's sort of right. And slowly but surely we are working our way through this tapestry. And what this reminds me of is the column of Trajan, and later the column of Marcus Aurelius. In both cases, you have a column in Rome that has this wraparound design that tells the story of a military campaign in pictures. So I think that the people who made the Bayeux Tapestry knew about that and decided to do this, but instead of having a wraparound stone column, which wasn't really their forte technologically, they would instead make a linen cloth, really long one, and they would then embroider it with this incredible story. And luckily, what?
It's all embroider and not paint?
Yeah, that's embroidery.
Oh my goodness.
No, this is a massive amount of work that's gone into this. And the amazing thing is that 1,000 years later, it still exists. We still have it to photograph. It wasn't burned or destroyed.
So why are the horses why are their legs like 3 different colors? Because there's some that have black, yellow, and red legs.
Okay, do you understand that horses are not monochrome? That horses sometimes have like blotchy
Yeah, but
patterns?
it just looks weird.
I don't know, like
You never seen a blue horse
The brown
before?
one had
No,
like
I
the back legs being blue, and the blue one had the back legs being brown. But I think that was just so you could tell them apart.
Yeah. It basically, I'll give you the standard answer. It's art.
Okay.
I don't know. But here, look, you've got the horses with different colored legs. And yeah, it's to distinguish the far legs from the near legs. And yes, there's a blue horse or two. And the Viking ships, what you're seeing there is the clinker-built hull, which has a layering of planks. Obviously, you don't have a red and purple hulled Viking longship. If you did, things would be weird. By the way, everyone at this point uses Viking longships. The Normans, because they're Vikings. The Anglo-Saxons, because they're influenced by the Vikings. The Norwegians, because they're Vikings. And let's see. So we're still getting ready for the battle. Oop, that looks like the feast. Yep. So you see all this stuff that's been shown so far. The animated version edits out and speeds up the action. Now they're building their Mott and Bailey castle. But yeah, no, the amount of effort that goes into this is a royal thing. This was commissioned by William, and it took years to make. And it is probably the classic art object of its time in all of Western Europe. And there they are getting ready to attack and go up the hill. Now, why is this battle important? Because before the Norman conquest, England was a rich, weak country. After the Norman conquest, England is a rich country ruled by the hybridized African killer bee, Frenchified Viking Normans. And England is going to become a bit of a superpower for a while. And it's going to remain hardcore tough and strong up through the present day. So the Norman conquest is going to be horrible for the Anglo-Saxons for the next 250 years. They're going to be treated like scum in their own country. And I'll go into more detail when we do the High Middle Ages in England. But ultimately, for the nation, the Norman conquest is going to strengthen Britain. Nobody is going to think about attacking from Norway again. And even on those rare occasions where the Welsh fight the English or the Scots fight the English, mostly it's because the English are invading their lands. They're not attacking the English. And on the occasions, the rare moments when the Scots do invade England, it's not a serious conquest. It's more to mess with the English and show them that we can burn your cities too. It's not really an attempt to permanently occupy English territory. So England, the English people are going to suffer, but the English nation is going to benefit from the Norman conquest. And it looks like we're at the end. So there you are. The Bayeux Tapestry and the Norman conquest of England. And you're going to have a quiz tomorrow on the Dark Ages. See, it says so on the board. Right under Bayeux Tapestry, it says Dark Ages quiz. So be ready for it and have a nice day.